I like democracy, okay? And with the two options that are given under our duopoly, I want the one option that's closer, technically, supposed to be closer to me, to represent my interests. Let's move on. Harry Enten identifies never seen before presidential race point.
CNN released a slew of battleground polling. There was so much information inside, but one thing was missing. One big thing. CNN senior data reporter Harry Enten, who is with us now. I'm not sure I've ever been happier to see you here.
I'm not sure I've ever been happier to be with you, Mr. Berman.
This race is close.
Yes.
Harry. Historically close.
Historically close. You know, I just want to sort of zone out a little bit, go to 35,000 feet, and just point out how close this race has been consistently close. All right, campaigns where any candidate led by at least 5 points in the polls. Look, most of the time there's at least some stretch where one of the candidates is ahead by at least 5 points. At least 3 weeks in which one candidate led by at least 5 points. That happened in every single campaign from 1964 to 2020. How many days have we had this campaign where one candidate was ahead by at least 5 points nationally? Look at this. 0 days. 0 days. The fact is this race has been consistently tight in a way that we have never seen before, Mr. Berman.
This is always versus never.
Correct.
That's the difference between this campaign and every other campaign we've seen for the last 75 years or so.
This is the reason why I think it's ridiculous that the Democrats are like running victory laps, okay? It's dumb as
It is a race, Mr. Berman, that is well within the margin of error when you look across these 7 key battleground states that will determine this election.
You look at this and you go, oh, 0.3%. Then, you know, they're basically the same. But you're talking about actual vote margins that were so small. So show us the difference that a polling margin can make.
All right, so let's just say the polls match up perfectly to what the results end up being. Kamala Harris would win this election with 292 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 246. But let's just say we move the current polls and let's say the result differs by them by a single percentage point and Donald Trump is the beneficiary of it. Look at this. If Trump outperforms his current polls by just a single point, you take that Kamala Harris win and look at this. Donald Trump gets 287 electoral votes because the bottom line is Pennsylvania would flip up here and you would also get this flip out in Nevada over here. And that, my friends, is what we're talking about. We are talking about the closest campaign in a generation where a single point could make all the difference in the world. John, this is a truly exciting race right now where
it's just interesting because it's like there are some things that she could do to like lose no votes and win some in literally virtually all of these swing states. I don't see the Dems doing victory laps, bro. Everyone's saying ignore the polls and vote. That's not victory laps. First of all, I literally was at the heart. I was in the belly of the beast. That's what I'm referencing when I say that they were doing victory laps, like they were dunking on Trump in Pennsylvania by like 10 points or some shit. That's number one. Number two, Democrats are running an objectively bad campaign. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You might not want to see it. You might not recognize it. They are running an objectively bad campaign. They might still win, okay? But they are running an objectively bad campaign. And that's why it's cut across on the momentum as I told you it would. It cut across on the enthusiasm as I told you it would since the DNC. Why? Because Americans, no matter how stupid we are as a collective, are still not so stupid that we hear a president repeat like Biden-esque policies and not the good stuff, but only the bad stuff and moderate to the center. And we go, oh, this is boring. This is lame. This sucks. This doesn't like genuinely improve my life. And I kept repeating this over and over and over again. And people kept telling me, Hasan, you're wrong. Hasan, you're wrong. I don't care about it. Okay. The proof is in the polls. Now, besides that, there is one through line that I am genuinely afraid of. There's one thing on foreign policy front that I absolutely am fearful of, not only for the future prospects of American society, but also, despite, this empire coming to an end, I'm also worried about it for the Democratic Party's chances of winning this election. You might not believe me. Regardless of my own personal motivation in this, when I do electoral analysis, when I do analysis on elections, I'm thinking about this from the perspective of what works, okay? What I know would work. People are crying out for progressive policies, such a fuck up. Yeah, One of the most popular policy prescriptions that Kamala Harris unveiled that has gotten a shit ton of right-wing communist, anti-policy sentiment has been price controls, okay? Targeting price gougers specifically. Very good way to frame this. That's currently polling at 89%. Now go ahead and poll the startup, the bill that she unveiled in her bold, declarative economic agenda that's going to move America forward. We're going to give like startups in underserved communities $50,000. That's just not going to move the needle in the same way. So I've proven once again to you with data that if going after price gougers is at 83% approval rating, and I think like 13% disapproval rating, despite the fact that Republicans are attacking it relentlessly and calling Kamala Harris a communist, maybe, just maybe, looking at the actual material realities on the ground and identifying a solution that every American can understand and putting forward a bold policy to combat that issue, to genuinely improve their lives, is a successful method. Now, why won't they do that for anything else? Because they want to lose. They're just bad, I think.
Any slight movement can make all the difference in the world.
And even more exciting because you are here with us.
Thank you, John.
As we've been noting this morning, we're just 2 months out from the election. The first ballot's set to be mailed out this afternoon, and this race is so incredibly close. CNN's latest polling shows an incredibly tight race across 6 battleground states, and it is closer. It is so close in Pennsylvania. It is the closest of these contests. The Keystone.
She's also losing she's losing support in Michigan, which I said she would. Like, that's something that's very troubling.
The keys to the Senate, incumbent Democrat Bob Casey is polling, according to this, tied with Republican challenger Dave McCormick. Here was Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, who was campaigning in Erie, PA yesterday, taking a page from the state's popular Democratic governor.
It's very clear that our opponents in this race see the world differently. Now, I'm going to quote, which I think is a brilliant quote, by your great governor, Josh Shapiro. He often says, and I hear him say this, whenever Donald Trump's talking about America, he's talking America. He does not believe in the promise of America, and he continues to put this country down.
Now is CNN political commentator Michael Smerconish. He is the host of CNN's Smerconish. Michael, wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
That's not a real show. That's a show. There's a show on CNN called Smerconish. That's crazy.
Let's talk about Pennsylvania. I mean, honestly, we could probably do every political segment from here until Election Day on Pennsylvania, because at the end of the day, it might be the entire ball game. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What do you think it's going to come down to here?
So to your point about the good to see you, by the way. Thank you, Casey, for having.
Our elections are so sick because, like, pretty much the fate of, like, the American future is now in the hands of, like, a collective total 40,000 Pennsylvanians, some of which are the dumbest Pennsylvanians you've ever encountered. Like, dumber than the average Pennsylvanian. And there's plenty of dumbasses there, okay? That's so sick. I think that's a great way to run the nation.
Having me back. To your point about just how close the race is, Real Clear Politics, as of this moment in time, says 47.2 to 47.2 in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It can't get
Pennsylvanian dickhead here. I'm voting for Biden.
Get much more close than that. Tim Walz, Governor Walz, why is he in Erie? Because Erie, as you well know, is one of those bellwethers. If you win Erie, Pennsylvania, you're going to win the Commonwealth. And if you win the Commonwealth, chances are you're going to win the presidency. Can I put on your radar the concern that I have about where this is all going? Because the pre-canvassing process doesn't begin until 7 a.m. on Election Day. They can't touch those mail-in ballots until that morning at 7 a.m. This is one of the reasons why in 2020, you'll remember.
Look at this. We're entering the heat of the campaign. The race between Kamala Harris and Donald J. Trump remains incredibly close by any measure. We've updated this page to combine our 2 previous averages. One which tracked the polls that included Robert F. Kennedy Jr. into 1. Either way, neither candidate is a discernible lead in key battleground states. Pennsylvania is 49 to 49. This one says 49 to 48. Michigan is now 48 to 46. Kamala Harris had a larger bump early on, and then that lead is softened. Kamala Harris going from 49 to 48% to 47, back to 48, 49 to 47% in Wisconsin. Deadlocked in Georgia since the swap out. Nevada 48 to 48, Arizona 48-48, North Carolina 48-48. This all comes down to Pennsylvania. Don't Trump voters typically get underrepresented anyways? Yes, there is that problem. There's the issue of Trump voters being underrepresented. There's the issue of Trump voters, or like the types of voters that Trump is going after now that are even more underrepresented in the polls in general. It is a real issue that they are not seeking to address, it seems.
Wolf Blitzer called the race the Saturday after.
I don't understand. Y'all, you advocate against Harris, but also want her to win law? No, man. I like democracy, okay? And with the two shitty options that are given under our duopoly, I want the one option that's closer, technically, supposed to be closer to me, to represent my interests. That is the entire purpose of democracy. It's not team sport. Like, oh, I'm happy if the same policies are being implemented, same awful right-wing policies are being implemented, as long as it's being done by my team. Like, that's not how this works, okay? Because I'm not a partisan hack. As it stands, Kamala Harris has not done enough, nowhere near enough, to convince someone like myself. But I don't think she's also done enough to convince other people that are not like myself at all, that are maybe paying a little bit of attention to the race, but hasn't heard anything that's like causing them to experience genuine enthusiasm. It's Hasan's fault if Trump wins. Yes, it's definitely my fault, and I'm super stoked to bring about a Trump W.
Storm that's brewing. And if I'm hoping for one thing as we are 9 weeks out, it's that there be a decisive outcome one way or the other, so that we're not having to pick up the pieces and figure out who's telling the truth.
Yeah, Michael, I mean, what do you think the likelihood is of that at this point? I mean, candidly, when Biden was at the top of the ticket, this race was increasingly becoming not a close one. It seemed clear that Trump was on track to win. That's not the case now. And we've heard Trump start to use some of the language that, honestly, it has echoes to what we heard him saying back in 2020 as that week basically was unfolding between Election Day and that call on Saturday. And yeah, I barely slept that week, as I'm sure you did.
Here's the thing, dude. People will be like, yo, dude, you have an unimaginable amount of influence on the election. Like, you need to swing for the fences with like your Kamala Harris, with your support for Kamala Harris. And it's like, if that's true, which it isn't, it's a laughable notion. Thank you for thinking that, but it's not true. But if that were true, and Kamala Harris didn't actually petition me for my votes by offering sound policies that I am advocating for, then she's a idiot. But that's not true. And you all know that that's not true. You're just looking for someone to blame because you're powerless. There's nothing you can do that will cause the Democratic Party to listen to you. There's nothing you can do to change all of the things that are happening around you as like things get increasingly shittier, as it becomes less and less likely that you will be able to ever own a home, ever retire. Things are getting more expensive. People are getting dumber and dumber. And you want someone to be responsive. It's funny because you're either a shill for going to the DNC, but also trying to hand Trump the presidency. Yeah. Or I'm exactly what I say I am, a person who has like moral convictions and will stand by them and demands that at least one out of the two parties is likely supposed to be more responsive to my demands actually do that bidding, like follow through on a progressive agenda.